The beautiful thing about getting older is just all that wisdom that you've gained along the way. And we are much more resourceful than we give ourselves credit for.
Did you push record?
Thanks so much for tuning in to Our Second Act with Paige and Silka. Today I'm so happy to bring a new expert to Second Act TV, all the way from the Marine Corps to mentor, business and lifestyle strategist Tami McVay. Tami, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Well, I'm really excited. I read up your stuff. You one of the things, of course, you specialize in is helping people reinvent life, which is a huge topic here on Second Act TV, reinventing your life after 50. And you bring some things to the table that others do not. So I'd like you to give us a little bit more background, on who is Tami, how did you get where you are today, and how are you today helping people live a better life?
Yeah, so I have been really fortunate in that I've had a really diverse life. And so I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17, and I spent the, 4 years in, and I didn't realize at the time just how much I was taking that for granted. But now that I'm older, I recognize how much that shaped me in the way that I am. And so because of that, I've really driven my life in a lot of different directions. So I went on to become a software developer. I worked for an engineering firm for 20 years. I had written software that processed over $1 billion. And but in the meantime, as I had this successful corporate career, I was also really passionate about health and fitness. And so I got my personal trainer certification just to have better workouts. Like, who does that, right? And then I was traveling the world. Like, I was fortunate when I moved to Colorado that I met friends that were adventurous. And so they, I didn't grow up traveling. And so we went biking in Spain and we went biking in France. And so I have this big picture umbrella that a lot of people don't have. And so 4.5 years ago, I quit my corporate job to become an online entrepreneur. And so now I lead masterminds and adventure retreats for driven entrepreneurs, and I really get them to tap into that powerful side to themselves so they can go do the things that they really want to do in the world.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We just did a couple different videos on becoming an online entrepreneur after 50. It's just amazing the opportunities that we have now that we didn't, years and years and years ago. And you do bring a very adventurous spirit to it, which I love. And of course, I'm personally very much into health and fitness. I think that's everything. If we don't have our health and our fitness after 50, life makes it even more difficult. Let's talk about, you have a unique approach to reinventing yourself or perspective, perhaps. How do you counsel people or help people reinvent their life after 50?
One of the Marine Corps sayings is adapt and overcome. And so you adapt, you figure out what's working, what isn't, and you adjust. And so it's almost like giving people permission to just try and to fail. So because it's really not failure, it's a lesson. And so I also think just being able to experiment is really key.
And I'm hearing you say, and that it does come up a lot, is really overcoming fear of failure,
Yes.
or trying something and not being able to, or not being afraid to fall down. Talk to me about that.
Well, so I think as we get older, there's this weird dynamic, because if you've been really successful in one area, it's almost like you want it to be instantly successful in the other area. And or there's these doubts, like you just don't want to look, silly, you don't want to be judged. And so then there's that emotional component to it as well. But the beautiful thing about getting older is just all that wisdom that you've gained along the way. And we are much more resourceful than we give ourselves credit for.
Well, and you just brought up a good point. Yes, we have gained a lot of wisdom, but we don't give ourselves credit for it. Thus,
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
How do you approach handling confidence or building our confidence?
Well, so much around the personal development space. Like, for a long time, I struggled because there wasn't this tangible thing. You may feel confident one day and then not confident the next. So, how do you really rate your confidence? And so I really made it a point to try to make things measurable, So then that way, when you're in this emotional state and you have all these emotions and fears coming up, if you have something that's data based, then you can always go back and reference that. So, for example, like one of the exercises I take my clients through, I call it the wall of worth, to remind you just how worthy you are of what you want to do. And so, we take for granted all of these experiences that we've had along the way. So, for example, here I was the successful software developer, but when I wanted to become this coach and I wanted to focus on personal development and business development, I had all these doubts come up. But then I realized, like, for decades, I had been going to women's leadership retreats. I had been reading books. I had been going to seminars. And so I really took the time to like sit down and look at like how much money I spent, how many hours I spent, what books did I read? And all of a sudden I realized like I'd spent over $200,000 in learning what I know. And just because I had never charged for it before, it just really helped validate that for me.
Yeah. No, I love that. And what was coming to me as you were talking is, I mean, you're obviously a very strong, beautiful, successful woman. And there's a lot of beautiful success or strong women out there, but not necessarily feeling they are successful. Especially if you've been, and we have a lot of women like this in our audience, stay-at-home moms that either are now going through a divorce perhaps, or just really trying to find themselves, but have no confidence. They don't feel like they've never accomplished anything that they measured as successful, or because they weren't paid for it. Does that differ at all?
No, because I still think that there are underlying interests and things that when as a mom, I don't have any kids, but I know that as a mom that over time you dabble with things, and then you have time constraints, and so you kind of get away from it. And so really just taking that time to remind yourself of what those interests are, and especially when you can like let go of that identity of a mom for a moment and just think of yourself as a woman, and what would this strong woman look like now, and really just starting to explore.
Really, that's very, very common, I think, especially to our age group still. And I know I'm older than you. You're not as old as I am. But a lot of women in my generation, I'm 60 now, gave up their dreams and hopes because they got married, and it was expected. And probably I'm not saying they did it unwillingly. It's just that's just sort of the way it was, and not everybody falls into this, but a large chunk do. And I think that especially this program that you're putting together, this Jamaican trip, maybe we should talk about that as well. But just getting into an environment where you rediscover yourself on a whole new level, is cool. It's really, I think.
Yes. So one of the reasons I decided to pull adventure retreats into my business is I've really seen the power of that total immersion. Because if you can read a book and it can be really impactful and you can journal about it, but then when you have to go cook and do laundry, you can have all these great intentions that just kind of get set aside once again. But when you have the week and you have these really great, meaningful conversations with other amazing people, and then you go sit by the beach with your journal and really think about, well, what does that look like for me? That there can be amazing ahas come up. Another thing that I see too is we only know what we know. And so you may have this vision maybe of what, life would look like now or should look like, but then all of a sudden you meet somebody and they're doing something so far out of your, realm of experience, and you're like, what? That's possible? And so that's why I love the online space too, because it just opens up this world of research that you can go do.
Yeah, and world of opportunity. And oh my goodness, we're already at 10 minutes. Well, we're going to come back and talk some more with Tami. For this segment, Tami, what's the takeaway? What would you like to leave our viewers with?
It really comes down to looking at all of the interests, books you've read, any kind of course or conversation that you've had, and really start to outline how valuable you really are, and this wealth of knowledge that you really have to bring to the table.
Yeah, and we'll link to all your information, Tammy. To people can contact you directly if they so choose. I love your Jamaican trip, and so if somebody wants to sign up for that, great. If or just find time for yourself to discover yourself, and we'll talk more about that when we come back. Tammy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button's right over here. And as you click through to YouTube, there's a little bell right next to the subscribe button as well. Hit that and you'll be notified every time we post a new video. And be sure to visit our website, secondact.tv, for all kinds of videos on living your life to the fullest after 50. See you soon.